What if I told you some of the most valuable muscle cars in American history were never supposed to exist at all? Cars built by accident. Cars ordered by almost no one. Cars so rare that even hardcore collectors have never seen one in real life. And today, those mistakes, those forgotten orders, those last-minute decisions are worth hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. This is not just a list of cars. This is the story of American muscle legends that survived against the odds. Let's start with one that shouldn't have survived at all. Back in 1970, Ford found itself in a very strange situation. A racing organization had placed a special order for 96 grabber orange Mustangs, intended to serve as pace cars and limited edition event vehicles. Everything was planned. Everything was ready. And then, overnight, the organization went out of business. Ford was suddenly left with nearly 100 bright orange Mustangs sitting on lots, unwanted, unsold, and completely homeless. Most companies would have written them off. Ford didn't. Instead, they made one of the smartest regional marketing moves in muscle car history. They rebranded the cars as the 1970 Ford Mustang Twister Special and quietly shipped them to dealerships in Kansas, Northwest Arkansas, and Western Missouri, regions deeply connected to Tornado Alley. The name wasn't random. It wasn't flashy. It was personal. And that made all the difference. Under the hood, buyers could choose real muscle. Either a 300 horsepower 351 Cleveland V8 or the brutal 428 cubic inch V8. Automatic or 4-speed manual. Every possible combination was split evenly, which means only 24 cars per configuration. That's not rare. That's microscopic. Today, these cars almost never change hands. And when they do, collectors are willing to pay around $150,000. Assuming the car is authentic, documented, and untouched by time. And remember, this legend only exists because something went wrong. But if the Twister Special was an accident, the next car was something people were simply too afraid to order. Because nothing scared buyers in the late 1960s quite like 3 letters. HEMI. The 426 Hemi was brutal. Rated at 425 horsepower, but widely believed to produce much more. It had a reputation so intimidating that rumors still circulate about dealerships refusing to sell one unless the buyer proved they could actually handle it. Nowhere is that fear more obvious than in the 1969 Plymouth Road Runner Coupe. The Road Runner was wildly popular. It had personality, performance, and that unforgettable beep-beep horn. Buyers loved it, but when it came time to choose the engine, most played it safe. The majority stuck with the 383. Some upgraded to the 440, and almost no one checked the box for the Hemi with a 4-speed manual. In fact, according to Mecum, just 194 buyers did. That single decision turned the 1969 Hemi Road Runner Coupe into one of the rarest muscle cars of its era. And the market has not forgotten. When one crossed the auction block in 2023, it sold for $214,500, proving that fear, decades later, turned into value. And if you think that's rare, there's an even more extreme version. The Hemi Road Runner Convertible. Only 12 were ever built. So rare that many enthusiasts have never even seen a photo of one. That's not scarcity. That's mythology. Now let's take that same Hemi engine and wrap it in luxury. Because while the Road Runner was raw and stripped down, Plymouth also built something for buyers who wanted speed and sophistication. The 1969 Plymouth Hemi GTX Convertible. This was Mopar muscle in a tailored suit. Leather, options, comfort, and buried under the hood, the same terrifying 426 Hemi. Officially available but almost never ordered. According to Mecum, just 11 Hemi GTX convertibles were built in 1969. Only 6 of those came with an automatic transmission. And these weren't bare-bones cars. Buyers could load them with power windows, bucket seats, vacuum gauges, variable speed wipers, and even a 150 miles per hour speedometer, because Plymouth knew exactly what this thing could do. In 2020, one of those 11 surfaced with an asking price of $230,000. And here's the twist. It didn't sell. A reminder that even in the elite world of Hemi Mopars, rarity alone doesn't always guarantee a buyer. But if you want to talk about true scarcity, we need to talk about Dodge. Specifically, the 1970 Dodge Coronet R/T Hemi. By 1970, muscle cars were still being produced in huge numbers. But the Hemi was expensive, insurance costs were rising, and the golden era was already beginning to fade. Out of tens of thousands of cars, only about 1,500 left the factory with the Hemi engine that year. And almost none of them were Coronets. Dodge built just 13 Coronet R/T Hemi models in total. 13. Only 4 hardtops came with a 4-speed manual. And convertibles? It's believed only one was ever made. These cars produced 425 horsepower and nearly 500 pound-feet of torque, numbers that still command respect today. When one of the manual examples crossed the Mecum auction block in 2023, it sold for $247,500. At that point, you're not buying transportation. You're buying a legend. But long before the Hemi Wars, Ford was fighting a different battle. Drag racing. In the early 1960s, Ford's Galaxy was powerful but heavy. Too heavy to compete with lightweight Super Duty Pontiacs and Max Wedge Mopars. So Ford did something radical. They built a weapon. The 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. This wasn't a street car pretending to be fast. This was a race car wearing license plates. Under the hood sat a 427 cubic inch FE V8, topped with dual 4-barrel carburetors. Officially rated at 425 horsepower, unofficially believed to be far closer to 500 or even 600. Comfort was optional. Heaters removed. Radios gone. Sound deadening stripped away. The cars were sent to Dearborn steel tubing, where the engine bay was reworked just to make the massive 427 fit. The result? A 3,200-pound monster built to meet NHRA minimum weight requirements and dominate the superstock class. Only 100 Thunderbolts were produced. 51 automatics. 49 manuals. Today, the Thunderbolt is one of the most respected factory drag cars ever built. And according to Classic.com, the average value sits around $253,000. Not bad for something designed to go straight, and nothing else. But 1963, that was pure insanity. This was the era of Swiss cheese frames. Cars drilled full of holes just to save weight. An era where subtlety did not exist. And Chevrolet leaned all the way in. Introducing the 1963 Chevrolet Impala Z11. Option code Z11 unlocked a special version of the W-Series engine. What started as a 409 was pushed all the way to 427 cubic inches using a longer stroke crankshaft. Officially rated at 430 horsepower. Unofficially, most historians agree that number was extremely conservative. Many believe output was closer to 500 horsepower or more. Power was sent through a 4-speed manual, and braking was handled by heavy-duty Corvette Z06 components. According to Hagerty, just 57 Z11 Impalas were built, and only 25 were produced for the 1963 model year. Today, each one is valued around $296,000. And in the world of drag racing history, few names carry more weight. Now let's talk about one car that stands completely alone. A one-of-one. In 1967, Carroll Shelby had already transformed the Mustang with the GT500. It was powerful, aggressive, and wildly successful. But Shelby wasn't done. He wanted something extreme, something unforgettable, something that would prove a point. The result was the 1967 Shelby GT500 Super Snake. Built for a Goodyear tire promotion, the Super Snake was designed to run 500 miles at an average speed of 142 miles per hour. To make that possible, Shelby installed a GT40 Mark II 427 engine producing roughly 600 horsepower. This wasn't a concept. This wasn't a prototype. This was a fully functional, road-going monster. Only one was ever built. And when it sold at auction in 2019, it brought $2.2 million, making it the most expensive Mustang ever sold at the time. A single car, a single purpose, permanent place in history. And finally, we reached the end of the muscle car era. The oil crisis was coming. Emissions regulations were tightening. Sales were collapsing. The Plymouth Barracuda saw its numbers fall from over 55,000 units to just under 19,000. And buried inside that collapse was one final monster. The 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda Convertible. The last year you could order the legendary 426 Hemi. Just 12 were built. 7 for the US. 5 exported. Only 3 came with a 4-speed manual. Each one produced 425 horsepower. And today, they exist in a financial universe of their own. One sold for $3.5 million in 2015. Another reached $4.8 million at auction in 2021, though it failed to meet reserve. Not because it wasn't special, but because even legends have limits. And that's the truth about rare muscle cars. They weren't designed to be investments. They weren't meant to become myths. They were accidents, risks, bold decisions, and sometimes pure luck. And decades later, we're still telling their stories. If you enjoyed this journey through the rarest machines Detroit ever built, do me a favor, tap that like button so the algorithm knows this content matters. Subscribe if you want more deep stories behind legendary cars. And drop a comment telling me which one you'd take if money didn't matter. Because some legends deserve to be remembered.